host, Ryan Miller, and for the past 15 years, I've helped hundreds of people to raise millions of dollars for their funds and for their startups. If you're serious about raising money, launching your business, or taking your life to the next level, this show will give you the answers so that you too can enjoy your pursuit of making billions. Let's get into it. In this week's episode, I bring on the former NFL defensive back Mark Parson. Join Mark and I as we discuss how he defied the odds of success by making the decision to be unstoppable. Join Mark as he tells us the all-too-familiar entrepreneur tale and how the right mindset carried him to the height of his career in the NFL, back through the depths of despair, and out the other side as he launched himself into private equity, placing him in the elite club of professional athletes like Steve Young, Eli Manning, Alex Rodriguez, and more. Plus, Mark describes the early days on how he found mentors that helped him grow as a professional, tackling the intricate labyrinth of the investment industry that made him wealthier than ever before, guiding our mindset and efforts in our pursuit of making billions. Here we go. Hey, welcome to another episode of Making Billions. I'm your host, Ryan Miller, and today I have one of my very dear friends, Mark Parson. Mark is a former defensive back with the New Orleans Saints and the Houston Texans, and he's the founder of International Capital that focuses on a couple of things, gaming as well as patent investing. I'm going to let him get into it and exactly how he went from the NFL, went through a whole slew of things, much like any entrepreneur, myself included. He has the most amazing hero's journey I've ever heard in my life. So Mark Parson, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I've gotten to know you a little bit, man, and I can tell you what a story, what like the classic underdog story that happened. And maybe you can walk us through a little bit about your journey, where it started for you. And the reason why I do this is because many of our listeners around the world, they're not just a bunch of rich venture capitals. These are young guys, maybe old guys and women who are starting their businesses. Maybe they're feeling frustrated. Maybe they're feeling elated. Whatever it is, this is a story that many entrepreneurs in the venture capital space and the founder space can relate to. So if you could be so kind, maybe just walk us through the origin story. Where did it start for you? And then maybe we can talk about all the cool stuff that you're doing now and some of the key takeaways in investing that you've learned later on. So walk us through where it started.
Yes, sir. So started in Richmond, Virginia. That's where I was born and raised. And, you know, when it comes to my sports background, a lot of people see the results, right? They see the jerseys in the back, but it was definitely not easy. So I actually went to Fort Union Military Academy, and that was a grind. And I had a very difficult time getting my scholarship to play football in college. I was grinding. I sent letters to every single college on the East Coast, and they said I was too short. I wasn't the fastest guy, you know, so I had my coach help me, and we literally drove to different schools until really I got lucky. Coach Solich, he's the famous coach out of Nebraska. He won the national championship with Nebraska. He was coming into Ohio University, and that's how I got my shot. I ended up calling them at the right time, and they said, you know what, send your film. I think we may give you a chance. And that's how I got my opportunity. But it took an extreme amount of work just to get to college, you know. So I got the full ride to Ohio University, which is in Athens, Ohio. And it's the same thing. It never gets easier, but you really just level up and get better. And that's something that I learned from that point on that helped me later on in my career, as I will eventually find out. So, you know, I was on a few draft boards. They're like, hey, Mark Parson, he's one of the better cornerbacks in his conference. You know, can he run fast? Can he do this? We don't know. We're expecting to get drafted. So I just remember my draft stories, not the parties that people see and when you're excited. It literally was like one of the worst days of my life at that time. So
I got to hear this.
Oh, man. So I had it was two of my friends and my dad. And I had my cell phone on my lap. And we literally, you know, there's 7 rounds in the draft. We literally watched each round go by. And around the 6th round, my agent calls me and is like, Mark, I think the Washington, back then the Redskins, now Commanders, I think the Washington Redskins, they're going to pick you up in the 7th round. So I'm like, okay, I'm excited. And I get a call. I say, everybody be quiet. Just my 2 friends and my dad. And I pick up the phone and they're like, hey, Mark, I think we're going to pick you up in the free agency. So I'm like, oh, okay. They don't want to draft me. So I end up hanging up the phone. I'm like, okay. All of the rounds go by and I never get a call. So I did not get into the NFL the ideal way. I went undrafted. We call it, they call it off the street, basically. And I remember that month after the draft, I went home, I boohooed, like I cried my eyes out. I woke up the next morning, I said, you know what? I'm going to put in 3 a days. 3 a day, that's basically 3 workouts a day. I don't know where my opportunity is going to come. I remember I called all of the GMs in the NFL and say, hey, I'm available. And man, I got a call one day where I was just very frustrated at workouts. I mean, my body, mind was just beat up. Emotionally, I was just done. But I was just like, all right, I'm gonna keep going. So I get a call from Rick. It was Rick Smith. He was the general manager of Houston Texans. He said, Mark, we got a tryout for you. It's you against this kid from Texas. All right, let's see what you can do. Yeah. I knew I was in shape. And I'm gonna tell you, Ryan. Yeah. I said, I'm not leaving this field without this job. I'm not leaving this field. So I ended up going to the workout, very confident. I was in the best shape of my life. And I said, I'm willing to die for this. I literally was saying it in my mind. I was like, he's not going to be. Yeah. So fast forward, by the end of the workout, the other guy's throwing up and I'm still running. I'm still sprinting. So that's how I got my first NFL contract with the Houston Texans.
Oh my gosh, my man, that was amazing. You're like, you will not defeat me. This is unbelievable. And for those of you that are listening, you're going to keep hearing his story. He's only just begun. It gets crazier than this. But this is about, and I want to be clear, and I'm going to say this a few times, this is not about being invincible. This is about being unstoppable. And Mark, my man, you perfectly emulate this saying. So here you are. You finally get the contract with the Houston Texans. Tell me about career in NFL. I know, like, that's not easy. I mean, people think you get in the NFL, you made it. Let's chill. But that's not the case, is it?
Oh, Brian, I literally could talk your head off for about 5 hours about every sport. But I'll tell you this. A lot of people don't know this. Once you get to the NFL, it's not like, oh man, I made the team. All right, I made it.
Yeah. Yep.
Every week, you basically have a weekly contract. That's why guys fight for guaranteed money. It's because they can cut you anytime. Now, you're stuck to them. You're in contract with them. You can't just go to any team till your contract's up. But the NFL can let you go at any moment, literally every moment. So I remember, I went through training camp. They liked me. I played well. And I get through the first week. We played the New York Jets. Okay?
Yes.
And I remember after the game, I felt good. And then I get a call that next Monday. They're like, hey, Mark, the GM wants to talk to you. So I'm like, okay. I thought I made the team. I thought I'm on the team.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, Mark, it's a numbers game. We had somebody else in the offensive lineman. It's a different position. Get hurt. Yeah. So we're going to have to let you go, but we're going to bring you back. So I'm like, oh my God, I just bought a new car. I got my apartment. Like, what do I do? They're like, yeah, figure it out. So nobody was
cold, man.
Explain that process to me. So I had to learn it. I made the team, but then you get cut. You get released. So I ended up going back home, got back to working out, and then I got lucky. The New Orleans Saints called me. They're undefeated. And just to let you know, fast forward, I ended up getting picked. I went back to the Houston Texans, but that was a Super Bowl winning team that year. So I was with the Saints for about 10 weeks. So I got to experience an amazing organization. It was one of the best jobs I've ever had. I didn't know it at that point because I didn't know much. I was a young fella, but me being at 36, I'm like, man, they were super organized. Sean Payton. Yeah. I mean, the whole staff was amazing, and that's why they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Wow. So you bounce back and forth. It's in such one of the most cutthroat organizations. You're like, oh, I made it. I had a great experience while I had it there. And then it kind of slipped through your fingers, no matter how hard you worked out. And many entrepreneurs feel this way. funders and founders feel this way. You worked hard, you did everything right, you kind of made it, and then it slips through your fingers. What happened?
All right, so I bounced back and forth between the Texans and the Saints for about 3 years. And again, a lot of people think that if you're in the NFL, you're rich, like you make a lot of money. But you really don't, especially if you're bouncing back and forth, because you only get paid for the weeks that you're there. So I wasn't a Drew Brees. I didn't have a $50 million contract, you know? So I remember my last team that I played for was the New Orleans Saints. And I was really tired, man. I was tired of living out of my suitcase, living out of hotels, back and forth. And I remember that training camp, and I just knew that I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make this team, man. And I remember being in the locker room. I was sleeping on the couch. I'll never forget it. And it was right after we played the Oakland Raiders, maybe like a few days after. And I was expecting to at least get to the last preseason game to play whoever we're gonna play. And how they have it set up, Brian, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, the NFL, but they have a guy, the dreaded guy that comes when he comes, he taps you on the shoulder. You're done.
You're done.
So I was asleep, and then I was on the couch, and he tapped my shoulder, and I'm like looking up, and he's like, "Hey, Parson, Coach Payton wants to see you." So I was like, man. So I wasn't at that point, Ryan. Sean Payton, he said, "Mark, we really like you. You know, we got to move forward. We got to move in a different direction. Thank you for all that you've done." I said, "Thank you, Coach, man. I'm so grateful for the experience at that point." When I got home, there was a bit of bitterness towards football and the NFL that I allowed to grow in me, because I played this sport since I was 5 years old, you know? And I thought it was a certain way, and I worked my tail off, and I got there, and it was just even harder. You know, and I felt like I was leveling up, but at the end of the day, I felt like I failed. So I didn't watch football for like 2 years after that moment.
Wow. Right. Wow. So here you were, right? You did everything right, and you got tapped on the shoulder.
Yep.
And, it went the way that it did. And then here you were, kind of like, what do I do now? Like, this is what I understood. This is what I've done since I was 5 years old. I've been preparing this my whole life. Is this it? And I remember talking to you, and you said, you know what? You picked yourself up, and as many entrepreneurs do, and you said, look, the fundamentals here, it's either business or football. I took football as far as it was going to go for me. Now it's time for business. And I remember you telling me that you wanted to get better at sales. That was the first area of business training that you wanted to do. So you took a sales job. And tell me like a little bit about that, right? I remember you saying you knew you needed a shot.
Absolutely.
So you started a sales job. Maybe kind of walk through how it progressed from there on your business journey after the NFL.
Absolutely. Okay, so I remember getting back home, and I knew I was done football, and I was with a few of my friends, and I just literally was asking. I come from an entrepreneurial background, my dad, my brother, which I'll get into, but I just remember being around my friends, and I'm like, dude, how do you make money? Like, how do you make money? And we were like, it was, looking back on it, it's funny now, but I was like, how do you make money? So I went to my dad. Well, first, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get with my brother. My brother has owned a mental health behavioral services company for at that time about 10 years. And I always told people, I was like, okay, I'll take over my brother's business. I'll work with him.
Sure.
So I ended up, he said, okay, come on in. You work, a regular job, and you'll learn from me. So I ended up going to his company. And the first day, like I told you the other day, Ryan, I'm like, man, this is not the industry for me. And I told him, I was very upfront with him. So I'm like, man, that was what I used to hang my hat on when people were like, Mark, football is not forever, and I'm like, I'll just work with my brother. But now I'm in the real world, man. Like, this is real world stuff now. So I'm like, okay, well, that's not it. So then I went to my dad. My dad had a successful commercial real estate business. He also was a pastor of one of the biggest churches in Richmond, Virginia. Well, his church started to take a plunder. And then his commercial real estate, he had to fire sale. Like, he had to sell everything and took a huge loss. He had $5 million worth of real estate in where we lived, and he lost it during the recession.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
so I went and I
Yeah,
said, all right, so what do I need to do? How do I learn? I don't know anything.
right.
What he did was he had a huge library of books. Okay. And he said, all
Yeah,
right, read all of these books. I'm talking about from Robert Kiyosaki to, a ton of books, right? Here you go. And then
right.
he said, you need to
Yeah.
get a sales job. So I'm like,
Mm,
oh, okay. So he said, you need to learn how to sell. You need to learn how to communicate with people.
that's right.
So I'm like,
Yep.
all right. So that's when I got my sales job. It was my dad's advice, which, I mean, it was some of the best advice that I got in my whole life because I love people already, right? Now
Yeah.
I need to be able to communicate and influence people to make certain decisions, right? So that's how I got
Yeah.
my sales job.
That's awesome. So you were really inspired, and like so many people, such a wonderful book that has inspired people to level up was that book. I remember reading it in my younger years. Literally, I told my spouse, say she asked the same question, what if there was one business book that that I recommend, what would it be? And I said, yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad, for sure. If you want to really have a good break in on business basics and fundamentals, that's the place to start, and it did for you.
Right.
So you got a sales job and you learned how to sell. That was your first real world business training. You got quite good at it. And then you met a guy named John Gunsey. How did you meet this guy? Who is he to you? How did he impact you? Tell us a little bit about how John Gunsey, this random person we've just introduced, how did he affect your journey into heading towards the tremendous success you already have?
All right. So I'm at my sales job and I'm reading these books at the same time. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I need to start a business, right? So I'm like, all right,
Yep.
well, what kind of business? What industry? I have no clue.
Right.
So I'm like, but I do know I need to start a business. So what I did was I had a couple buddies who I grew up with. They were living on South Beach. They were living in Miami, Florida, right?
Ooh,
And
nice.
so I didn't know their current situation, but I knew they were telling me like, Mark, where we work, they had a security job at like one of the most wealthiest condominiums on South Beach. You know,
Okay.
it was
Hmm.
like furthest, the south that you can go. So he was telling me,
Yeah.
Mark, you have to literally have a net worth of $50 million to even live here. And we meet people all the time. So I'm like, man, maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can meet someone. You know,
Yeah.
like I could meet someone who
Yeah.
can possibly introduce me to the industry. So I said, okay. So I talked to my family and my wife, and I'm like, this is going to be a risk. I think it's going to be worth it. I need to move down there for at least 3 to 6 months. And I need to
Yeah.
just try to network and try to meet someone who can help me with this journey. I just know
That's
that
right.
somebody's down there. So
Hmm.
she's a trooper, man. She's tough. I tell you, I have to give her a lot. She's put up with a lot, me and me. So I
Yeah.
ended up I had to borrow the money to get a flight down to Miami. Okay.
Dang.
But
So you put it all on the line.
bro, right.
Yeah.
So so my buddy, he was like, man, we have this nice, it's a studio apartment, Mark. So, it's not fancy, but we're in paradise. So he built it up for me. So I get
Yeah.
there and I will tell you, Ryan, it's funny to me now, but I get there, we're in a small, dirty studio apartment. Now he did his best to clean it up a little bit, but bro,
Yeah.
I saw a roach. Now I saw a roach crawling. I said, wait a minute. I've never been around roaches, man. I'm gonna tell you. I come from an upper, middle class family. Not,
Yeah.
in Richmond, Virginia. I
Yeah.
can't complain, man. I had a great life. So I saw a roach,
Yeah.
and then one roach turned into 10 roaches. And I'll just say this, keep it brief, right?
Oh no.
I saw at least 50 roaches every single day that I was there, and I literally wanted to leave. I wanted to pack
Yeah.
my stuff up and fly back to Virginia, but something in
Hmm.
my mind was like, Mark, don't give up. Don't give up, man.
That's
You're going
right.
to meet somebody. Do what you got to do. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting that security job with him, and that's how I
Yeah.
met Mr. Gunsey because we
Wow.
couldn't really talk with the residents. Like you can't do
That's right.
that, right? I had to
Right.
always like find different ways to read who was available, who gave me eye contact, and I used my sales
Hmm.
background to just say, "Hey, how you doing, Mr. Like Mr. Gunsey walk up, Mr. Gunsey, how are you doing?" And I would smile, and
Hmm.
he try to get eye contact, and he gave me the most eye contact out of everybody. So then one day it
Yeah.
was perfect timing. I'm at the front desk, and I'm like, okay, is this my time? Is it my Mr. Gunsey, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
He said, private equity, Mark. I said, private equity. Thank you, Mr. Gunsey.
Yeah.
Of course, I go on Google and search, what is private equity? That's
What the heck is private equity?
that's my first exposure to funds. So
Yeah.
I looked it up, and then the next day I said, Mr. Gunsey, I looked up private equity. That's awesome. And I also see your company. This company was called Gunsey and Co. And
Yeah.
and what he told me, I said, how'd you get into that? He told me his hero journey, his hero story.
Yeah, yeah.
So he didn't start there, man. He started here, you know, and it just inspired me. So that was my first exposure to funds. And I put up with those roaches, Ryan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here.
Oh man. That is awesome story. So, dude, you put it all on the line. You had to borrow money to take a flight, to take the shot, to just talk to somebody about this, right? And you're like, I'm a pretty good salesperson. You know, I'm good at like helping people to navigate different decisions. And so you took this job. You're living at your friend's place temporarily. It was filled with roaches, and you're like, this is gross. I can't do this. But you toughed it out. And like kind of like Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So these roaches are like, you're punched in the face, and you're like, I had a plan. I don't know. And you're questioning it, right? So you're down on this journey. You're grinding it out. You're putting up with roaches. And then finally you get somewhat of a break. You meet John Gunsey, and he starts teaching you basics of private equity. Number one is, what is it? And so you got your shot. And many entrepreneurs, funders, and founders go through that. You got to go through some stuff. Maybe you live in some roach field. Not that that's advised, but you're going to go through some serious things that probably make you a little uncomfortable on your way to greatness. And that's exactly what you did. And you emulated the entrepreneur spirit. So I truly want to commend you for going through that. Not that you need it because you can laugh about it now, but at the time that was very uncomfortable, and you were still trying to find your way. And you did it. And you learned about that from John Gunsey. And so here you are, you learn the basics of private equity, and your vision started to get a little clear. And you're like, maybe private equity is the place for me. Maybe I'm going to be a funder. But starting a fund, as you know, is also a founder. But before we get too carried away, so now you've learned that, you're starting to learn, you're starting to level up. And then where did it go? You went from Miami, and then you moved to Atlanta, I believe. Maybe you can walk us through a little bit of how that your entrepreneurial journey went from there.
Right. So when I was in Miami and I met Mr. Gunsey, he would explain certain things to me, but I still was in the current situation I was in. You know? So true. He was helping me with my knowledge, and he was, he exposed me to the fund game, but I still wasn't in it. But I learned from his journey. The first thing he did was, he got a job in the banking industry first, but he started his own business, and that's really when things took off. So I'm like, okay, I still need to start my business. So my buddy, who played in the NFL too, one of my best friends, he was living in Atlanta, and he actually had an investor who was going to put the money up for a gym, physical location. I still had this knowledge. I help kids still to this day. I help players, when it comes to technique work and all that stuff. So I said, man, I like to go in business with you. So that's when I moved to Atlanta, and I had my family meet me in Atlanta. And that business, it was going to be a training facility. We had the investor, and the investor fell through. The investor fell through. We were training people outside until we could, try to raise the money to be able to do it. But it failed, man. And when it failed, my wife told me not to tell anybody this story, but I hit hard times right there, and I needed income. I needed some money. So my business failed. I thought we already had it. We were going to make it happen. And that, I remember, I'll never forget this. I was like, man, I got to get a job. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I had to let my pride go or my ego. And I walked down to this particular restaurant, and I had my head up high. And Ryan, I asked them, it's like a, you know what? I'll go ahead and say it. It was IHOP. I went to IHOP. I had no, I walked there. I said, "Are you guys hiring?" I said, "Hey, is the manager here?" They're like, "Okay, this guy, all right." I said, I said, "Are you guys hiring?" He said, "We're not hiring, but here's an application." I walked back home.
Mhm.
I filled out the application. I walked back to him and I said, "Sir, I just want to let you know I have a sales background. I have excellent customer service, and I would love to work at your establishment." The guy looked at me
Mhm.
like I was crazy. And this is the manager. He's like, "You know what? Go to Walmart, get yourself some slip resistant shoes, and meet me here on Monday."
That's right.
Within 2 weeks, he was trying to make me a manager because
Yeah.
I just everything I do, I'm like, all right, look, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be the best at what I'm doing. Okay, I don't
Yeah.
care what it is. So he was like, "Mark, I want you to be a manager." And in my mind, I'm like, dude, I'm just doing this so that I can get my business in order. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I
Yeah.
did, Ryan. I This journey has not been just straight up, man.
No.
I knew that I wanted to be in the fun world, but I was still learning. I was still studying. I was still reading books, but I still have a family. I have a wife and
Yes.
kids. So
That's
I
right.
ended up doing that for some time, and then I ended up moving back to Virginia.
All right. And and I want to be clear. So many people, you see this in the entrepreneurs, right? Some move back to their parents' house and work in their garage. Sometimes we call it, they went back to the lab
Yes.
and they said, all right, I tried something, it didn't work out. And I believe a quote from Game of the Thrones, where they said that you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. There's a difference. And that was what you did. And so literally you said, okay, look, like I need an income. I have a family. And so here I am. And again, here's another example of where you refused to be stopped, right? It's not about being invincible. It's about being unstoppable. There's a difference. And even if that means you put on a suit, you walk 2 miles in the heat, get a job, go back, fill out the application, go back and hand it in. Then you got to go, right? You refuse to be stopped. You were just saying, whatever it takes. I don't care if I have to be a manager at a restaurant. I don't care. I will not be stopped. I need something to hold me over, but this isn't it. This is me doing whatever I have to do on my journey to private equity.
Right.
I would say. You didn't say that, but I'm saying that this is certainly an example. And I want all of our founders and funders to hear this. If you need a reminder, just decide today that you will be unstoppable and you will make it. You will make it, just like Mark did. But I don't want to spoil the surprise, but so here you are, man. You're trying to figure it out. You're piecing it back. You're starting over from experience, not from scratch, and you're moving forward. So after that experience, right? They're trying to promote you. It's not really what you were looking for, but where did it go from there?
So I decided to move back to Virginia. I knew I had more resources. Everybody here in Virginia knew me. And I guess, again, that was a little bit of my pride because I was, the big football star. And now I'm struggling trying to figure out, I'm back at the bottom now. Like, I don't know what.
Yeah, how to feed your family. Yeah.
Now, I do know a little bit more.
Yep.
I understand sales. I understand I need to be doing my own business. I know I need to master a skill in industry. I just don't know what industry yet.
Yep.
So I moved back to
That's right.
Virginia. And one of my buddies I grew up with, his name was Ron Cade. He's coming into Richmond, coming into town just for the weekend. He's like, Mark, let's go downtown, man. Let's go. We have a friend who owned a restaurant downtown from high school. So I'm like,
Sure.
for whatever reason, that day I felt like crap. I got into a little argument with my wife, over something silly.
Yeah.
And I just was not in the best mood. But something told me, don't miss this opportunity. Go with Ron, man. So I'm like,
all right.
So we go downtown, and it's just me and Ron, just two black dudes talking at a bar downtown Richmond, right? I was set the stage for this. So we're talking, and this older white guy with white hair and a suit, just me talking right now, Ryan, and he and stands next to us and says, "Hey, can I join your conversation?"
What?
Yes. So, but we're nice. We're nice guys, and
they're like, yeah, sure, man.
Yeah, man. So we're like, yeah, come on. So this guy, his name was Larry Lucas. This moment changed my life forever. He starts talking, and I can tell he knows what he's talking about. He's smart. He knows about politics. He knows about business. He's traveled the world. He's just I'm listening to him. I think Ron actually, he actually starts to walk off. It's just me and Larry talking for like an hour and a half. And then he's
Wow.
like, so Larry's like, oh yeah, I just purchased the racetrack. So we have a racetrack about 45 miles outside of where I live,
What?
where they race horses. And it was
Yeah.
shut down for a couple years. So he's like, oh yeah.
That's a big deal in Virginia, that area. That's a pretty big deal to have someone own the track over there.
Oh yeah, Virginia is super rich in horse racing history.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, get out of here, man. You didn't buy that.
Yeah.
He was like, Google it. And then I pull it up on my phone, and sure enough, it says Larry Lucas from Revolutionary Racing purchases Colonial Downs Racetrack for $20 million. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this guy, okay. He's smart. He has some bread. Okay.
Yeah.
From this guy. So he's buying me drinks, and now we're 2 hours in, man. He's just giving me just information, just knowledge. So I'm like,
yeah,
if I could just be around this guy if I could just be around him, if I can get coffee for him, just be I don't care.
Anything. Yeah. Yep.
You know what he says? He said, I didn't ask for that. He was like, you know what? I like you. He said, would you like to get in the gaming industry? So I was like, yeah. He's like, sure.
Let's go.
Exactly what I was looking for, Ryan. I was looking for an industry. I can go hard, man. I can go.
Yeah, I know.
I can, work to master a skill, but I just didn't know where to go. So he was like,
that's right.
He said, this industry, Mark, there's no book that you can read for this. You have to be in it. So he said, meet me.
Awesome.
He said, look, meet me at the Jefferson Hotel tomorrow. I want to introduce you to my business partner. And I said, Larry, he gave me his number. I said, Larry, I'm serious about this, man. Because we were drunk a little bit. He said, hey, look, I'm half drunk, but I'm half sober too.
Yeah.
He stuck to his word, man.
Yeah.
That's why I help people, man. I have a guy who's working to get in the NFL right now. He's living at my house because he's supposed to go to the Ravens training camp, but he didn't have a trainer. Paying for his trainer. I'm paying for because I believe in it. I know what it feels like, man.
You know what it's like.
So anyways, I met with him and his business partner, and I was a fifth person hired at their company in Virginia.
Yeah.
They had me in their manager program. So I worked every single department, man. And I worked for little to nothing. Money, like my family were even looking at like, Mark, you're doing a lot for them. You may need to make some money. I said, okay, but look, I know what I'm doing. This is not what I want to do. I didn't meet Larry Lucas to just work a job for him. I want to work. It's not about, I know that I can make the money if I start my business. So I learned so much. He used to take me with him to the city council meetings to learn. I'd be a fly on the wall. I met so many people through him. And one thing that will always stick with me, Ryan, is he told me, Mark, it's all about people.
That's right. I would agree.
It's all about people, man. So that is ingrained in my mind. And I understand that I have to treat people well, and I have to learn how to add value to everybody who's around me. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you're going to be extremely valuable to them, right? So
that's right.
Long story short, I ended up working for them. That company sold for billions of dollars, just to let you know. It's like this is a big company, and I love this industry. So I ended up starting my own gaming company 3 to 4 years after that experience.
Yeah. So, and from that experience, and this is important because I've interviewed a lot of guests at this point, and a lot of them, and myself included, was right there with you. So we have a very similar story. Is you just knew in those early days that it was more important for you to work to learn than it was to work to earn. Even though, yes, you will earn, but the important thing is you need to be wealthy in your mind before you're wealthy in your wallet.
Right.
And too many people, entrepreneurs, who I would guess maybe it doesn't work out, at least according to their plans. It's because they were working to earn first, and they tried to fatten their wallet before they fattened their perspectives. And so you did, I would say that you would go out being unstoppable like you decided to be, and you said, look, this is part of something bigger. I am building something bigger. And often we level up in our mind much faster than we level up in our circumstances. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you met Larry Lucas, you learned the gaming industry, you're a fly on the wall, and it's important, and I want to echo this to a lot of our entrepreneurs, is you just got to get in the room. Whatever you got to do, And early in a lot of these episodes, I did that by I always say, be generous. And I tell all the people that I talk to and have the opportunity to give them my opinion, is one of the best ways to get in the room is just be generous. Just say, how can I help you? How can I add value? Right. And you look people in the eyes. How's your day going? Like, you're very friendly. You used your sales skills. You used every skill you had. You learned the business. You got in the rooms. And then you finally made the decision to say, now it's time. I've worked to learn. Now it's time to work to earn. And so you started your gaming business. Can you walk me through a little bit about that?
Yes. So yeah, I was introduced to. So gaming is very broad, right? There's a bunch of types of gaming. So I was introduced to a different type of gaming in the state of Virginia. It's called charitable gaming. So I remember my dad. I was always in the community heavy. As a kid, my dad was a preacher. He was a pastor. So it was a C3. So I knew all about that, and I knew a lot of people in that area. Where I'm from. So I ended up. Long story short, with charitable gaming, we had to work with 501c3s. We had to help them raise funds.
Right.
So a lot of nonprofits struggle because they usually depend on donations, right? Yeah. So the state of Virginia regulated this particular type of gaming, charitable gaming, in order to help nonprofits. Just a lot of people didn't know about it. So
that's right.
When I got introduced to it, I'm like, man, I could run with this. So, and it's back to the sales and back to people skills, Ryan. So we ended up helping multiple nonprofits raise millions of dollars, leveraging gaming. And my income now as a business owner soared. And then I got involved in some other type of gaming. And then that soared. I mean, we're talking, remember, I was barely scraping by years prior, and now I'm making more money than I did in the NFL on a monthly basis.
That's right. Oh my goodness. Nice. I love this story. And my understanding is you had the opportunity to help the local firefighters. Is that right?
Yes. So the firefighters were gifted a location, a building. So Richmond, Virginia is like one of the first places that they had firefighters. So what they wanted to do was build a museum. Yeah. So the city gifted it to them, but they needed to raise money for the renovation. Okay. So we helped them, man. And they were really cool, man. They used to struggle raising money though, because you have to go to, beg for money. I shouldn't say beg, but
with the boot. Yeah. I remember. Yeah. What they do up here in Canada as well.
So I had a couple friends in the department, and it was a process. It wasn't necessarily, I still, we had to talk to the board, I had to talk to this guy, they had to show them the machine. Yeah. But through the process, we went through the process, they ended up raising about $150,000, and they got the money to renovate the property.
Right. And I remember you telling me this story where they were traditionally raising about 5,000.
Yes.
When you got in to support them with your background in understanding regulations, working with governments, gaming, all of that stuff. So to see how you worked to learn, and now you were able to work to earn, and you went from what traditionally got them 5,000, and their take was 150,000. And plus, I'm assuming you got paid a little bit for that, for your efforts as well.
I got paid handsomely for that. You just sparked something in me. Like you said, that time when I was hustling and working hard and I wasn't getting paid much, I was doing so much and I was learning so much at a fast rate, and that paid off later on. Obviously, starting my first company, my first gaming company, and my income soared. And then to even today, recently, earlier this year, we ended up starting the goal was a gaming fund. Before I even launched the actual fund, before I even filed legal docs, we had raised $10 million to be able to invest in different casino opportunities.
Man, that is amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'm just geeking out over your success. So here you, dude, like you went from a roach-filled place in Miami to working in restaurants, just trying to find the right person, the right room, the right thing, and you did a little by little. There was no silver bullet, but the fact that you would not be stopped, you made the choice that you would not be stopped, you would do whatever it took, is exactly the entrepreneur spirit. And I'm so glad that it paid off for you. So you go from that and you're adding massive value. Could you imagine? I don't even know what that return is to go from 5,000 to 150,000. Like, what a difference.
Absolutely.
It's an entirely different universe that you took them into, all because you just knew a more intelligent way. Why? Because you managed to go forfeit trying to fatten your wallet, and you fattened your perspective and your education. So you invested in yourself, and now it's that investment as a long game strategy has certainly started to yield its fruits for you. So now you've gotten good at the gaming industry, working with governments, raising money, putting syndications together, growing a business, and so on. You learned all that. You started providing value, and you're like, I remember the lessons from John Gunsey about private equity. Oh yeah, back to that original guy, those early days when I was living in a roach-filled place.
Right.
And that's where he went. He went from entrepreneur to fund manager.
Right.
And so now you're how did that start? My understanding is you were ready to launch a fund, but it really started early, or you started to expand when you got into Bitcoin about 2015. Is that right?
Right. The first time I was exposed to Bitcoin was 2015.
That's right.
So I remember, just to let you know, the funny thing is this older guy, man, and that's the irony. He's an older dude, another older guy.
Yeah.
Which is all about people, right?
It's mentors.
Guy, he didn't look as fancy as Larry though. Well, I don't know if I listened to them. Obviously, I didn't listen to his message back in 2015. This guy used to come up every day. He used to come, hey Mark, you need to research Bitcoin. I was like, yeah, old man. You know what I mean? I was like,
okay.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I know Bitcoin, but it's $500.
Yeah.
I mean, it was super volatile too. So I was
sure, yeah,
yeah, man. And he was just like, just learn it. I'm just telling you, learn it. Here, I'll give you a free course. And I didn't listen to him.
Yeah.
And but I bought it. I had about three Bitcoin at $500 per Bitcoin back then. But anyways, I missed out on that Bitcoin. But each bull run, I witnessed it and I saw it, and I was like, oh man. And I didn't have much money back then either,
Sure.
But
because you were learning, not earning. That's fine. It was a different season of your career.
But I saw it, and I was paying close attention, and I saw the bull run. It would shoot up to, I remember in 2017 it shot up to 20,000 and came down to $3,000 in 2018. I saw it, each one, and people were saying it's dead. I'm like, no, this thing's gonna boom. So I ended up, when it comes to Bitcoin, and just from a speculative standpoint, I made a good amount of money in crypto in general last year, because I saw, what Bitcoin and the opportunities in crypto and all that good stuff. But then, and I think this is where you're going with it, Ryan, Web3, my new baby, right?
That's right.
All right. So I was exposed to that back 2015, but my baby now that I think is the most scalable company that I will have in the near future, I believe it's going to be $1 billion business. And that's why I'm making billions. That's why I'm on your podcast. But
you got it, bro.
Web3 IPA. So IPA stands for intellectual property assets. So my good luck friend Ron. Okay, now this is years later. Okay,
he's your lucky charm.
And I'm on social media posting different articles and stuff about Web3 and crypto and NFTs. He's like, Mark, I see that you're involved in Web3. He said, hey, what are you doing? I said, hey, man, come over to my house if you're in town. So he came over to the house. My wife, she bought some sushi. We had some wine and we sat down.
Yeah.
And that's when he exposed me to what he was building. He partnered. So Ron went to HBCU, which is a historically black college. And he partnered with one of his buddies at Howard University, who's a patent attorney for the last 10 years at DLA Piper, which is one of the best firms in the world.
It's a big firm. Yeah.
And what he does is he helps companies build patent portfolios in order to raise their valuation, to block from patent trolls from trying to steal their IP, and then create and generate revenue. So he works for companies, I'm talking about massive companies and billion-dollar portfolios, and he helps build it. And he forms a patent think tank, and they do that, and that's what they do. So I was like, so he was like, we want to do it for the Web3 industry, ecosystem. So I'm listening to him. I'm like, man, this is big. And we already have our first patent, and we believe it's going to do this, and this is why. And I'm like, that's going to work, man. So then I'm why don't we I said, why don't we build our own fund and
Yeah.
build our own patent portfolio that generates licensing revenue, and we increase the valuation. Why don't we build our own fund, man? When we raise the funds and build it, man. And they were like,
Yeah.
a fund. Because remember, the way to scale, John Gunsey exposed that to me. And then I started studying other people. And that's how we started Web3 IPA.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you started, and so you have, and now you have this investment fund that it's actually two prongs. So one area is focused on gaming still, right? Your original show horse, I guess we'll call it, the one that helped you to win a few races and really changed your life.
Right.
And now you're also leveraging the secondary fund that you're looking into funding. And I believe you mentioned you were inspired by a guy who has a similar fund. His business model, Michael Hall, not the actor who plays Dexter, but a different Michael Hall. And his, I can't remember, but his fund makes like an obscene amount of money just by holding patents, and he has a fund. Is that right?
All right. So yes. So the way Ron was exposed to this, and this is why Ron's brilliant. Okay. You got to remember, it's all about people. Okay.
That's right.
So
you got it. It's the team.
Smarter people than me, right? So So check this out. So Ron, back in 2013 or 14, he started a company. It was a food delivery service in Washington D.C.
Right.
Called Urban Delivery. Yeah. And he was operating. He's making money. He's doing his thing, and he gets hit with a cease and desist letter. So he's like, "What is this?" Now, mind you, he did go to law school. He wasn't operating as a lawyer. But he's like, what is this? So he went to his buddy, says, is this real? He's like, yeah, man. You need to go to court and see what's going on. So he goes to court, and there's a gentleman that has his patent paper form, and he's waiting, and he stands up and says, hey, I could shut down these companies, and here's the patent, here's the proof. Sure enough, he could do that. So he was like, so Ron was, Ron being very curious, he goes up to him and talks to him. This guy had, this guy owned, I don't know exactly which patent it was, but he owned patents in the ride sharing space, mobile ride sharing, mobile technology when it comes to that. Okay, so so imagine that. So he did the research. Yeah. He only had a team of 3 people. Team of 3 people, but they did the research. They had their patent attorneys, and they were ahead of the game. And that's where I feel like Web3 IPA is. When our patent fund, we're ahead of the game in this emerging ecosystem, right? So this guy makes over like $80 million a month from his patent
with three employees.
Huh?
From a patent portfolio with 3 employees, $80 million a month.
Right. The U.S. government treats the U.S. government protects patents just like it's land. You know?
Yeah.
So it's extremely important. And I'll tell you this, look at Apple and Samsung. They have patent wars. These mobile phone technology companies.
There's a lot of money in that game.
Like Ryan, and I'll ask you this question. Like BlackBerry, when's the last time you had a BlackBerry phone? You had one, right?
I had one, and then and then I bought the first iPhone. So give you an idea, I had the BlackBerry Pearl, I believe, was it was super dated. So yeah, like whenever the first iPhone came out is when I retired my BlackBerry, like so many.
Well, I had the BlackBerry Curve. That was back in So the thing is, this company, nobody really uses their technology. Well, I'm not gonna say technology, but they're not selling their phone, right? They're not selling their brand is not being used. But guess what?
Mm-hmm.
BlackBerry just got sold for $600 million this year. And you know what type of company purchased them?
What's that?
An intellectual property company. An IP.
Just like Web IPA?
Yeah.
Yep.
I have a buddy.
Yep.
I have a buddy whose dad actually works for the company that financed the IP company to be able to purchase.
Yeah.
That IP is extremely valuable in that industry.
That's right.
So a lot of people, don't understand, intellectual property and patents, and I didn't really before I met these guys.
That's right.
But I've been researching, and everything that I do, I go hard at. That's how I got in the game, and that's why it's going to be, I believe, the most scalable company that I have is definitely, I believe, it's going to be in the billions.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And what a cool story about Michael Hall and getting shut down. And, for many of our listeners, we had a special by one of the attorneys that came on, and he talked about litigation finance, this very thing in different avenues. So this is an emerging asset class in funds and investing in entrepreneurship, is where people like yourself who start a business where they would acquire legal assets that investors can profit from. So whether that's buying the probability of a future settlement, buying into assets like IP, any of these things. This is a new emerging market, and maybe we'll include the links to that episode. But it's by Stephen Hutler from Sadis Goldberg. That gives us an example of what the power of litigation finance and how that is a huge market. In fact, I believe there was someone in Forbes that had a $200 million fund while she was still in college. She built a $200 million fund from litigation finance. So from these buying up these legal assets and using them in a profitable way is kind of a blue ocean. At least it is for now. Eventually it'll change. But it's one of those areas where there's not a lot of competition for you, and that's where you can make outstanding profit. So man, that is absolutely incredible. So you're launching Web3 IPA with your friend Ron, other high-end investors, and I think you're fundraising right now, right?
Yes, we're actually raising $10 million for our first portfolio.
So you got 10 million left for subscriptions. Okay, not a solicitation to invest, but just something cool that you're working on. Mm-hmm. So, well, dude, that is absolutely funny. And so I want all of our founders and funders who are listening around the world to hear this and to follow that journey. Is that to say, look, man, no matter where you start out, where you're at now, it can go up or down. But regardless, the point is make the decision not to be invincible, but trying to be unstoppable. So as we round third base, Mark, is there anything else that you would like to add or anything at all that you think our listeners may want to hear?
I would say gratitude. So remember when I told you about how I was bitter towards football in the NFL?
Yeah.
That actually kind of stifled me. That actually hurt me more than it would help me. So I had to let that go. I had to let that bitterness go. And I'll tell you this. That was a change. That was a moment that changed my life. Once I was like, you know what? I did all right, man. I did okay. Because I didn't reach the level that I thought I was going to reach. And a lot of football players, if you go talk to an NFL player after he's retired, a lot of guys go through the same thing I went through. You press for a couple years. You don't want to talk about football. So when I said, you know what? I'm grateful for that experience. And I'm going to start to leverage the NFL because they want us to. They provide amazing resources for us. So I started going to NFL events. I went to the Super Bowl this year, and they have tons of events for us. Went to the NFL Combine. They had tons of events for us. And they introduce you to different, they have corporate buyers. I'm talking about big boys too. I'm talking about Amazon, Target, PepsiCo. And I meet these people and learn from them. And they're open to us. Why? Because I played in the NFL. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like, oh, Ryan, I didn't mention this today, but one of the ways that I raised that money for my gaming fund, I created an awesome experience. I reached out to my buddy who who works for the NFL now, and we were going to be in Vegas anyways. So I was like, hey man, can you give me and a couple of my friends and buddies a private tour of the Las Vegas Raiders? And he was like,
sounds familiar.
He was like, Mark, say no more. You got it.
Yeah.
So we went there, and that was my first time there too. It was amazing for me. So later on that night, and I never told you this, Ryan. Later on that night, one of my biggest investors for the gaming fund, he was like, we were eating dinner at his hotel, and he was like, Mark, I mean, he almost looked like he was about to cry. He's a multi-millionaire, and he was like, this was a bucket list. He was like, whatever you need, just let me know. Wow. And if I was still bitter towards the NFL and football, do you really think that I would be able to even think and have the thought process to be like, you know what, let me create a cool experience for these guys so we can bond and have a cool relationship and build some stuff. So gratitude, man. Just
Well, I agree, and I am grateful that you invited me on that tour. That was a cool experience to go tour the Raider Stadium. So and I remember that guy. He was awesome. Well, that is absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for coming on this show. I mean, you and I we've hung out quite a bit lately. And so, as we start to sign things off here, it reminds me of a quote that I used when I was on my own hero's journey as well through entrepreneurship. And it was from the movie Rocky Balboa. And it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, go out and get what you're worth, but you got to be willing to take the hits. This was something that moved me forward, and I feel like your entrepreneurship journey, as you're just getting started, man. You're a young dude, and you've got tons of runway left in you, but so far your journey, like so many others, have emulated that. It's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit. And while that saying, if you live by that credo, that may not make you invincible, but it might make you unstoppable. And being unstoppable will take you to new heights in your pursuit of making billions.
Wow, what a show. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Now, if you haven't done so already, be sure to leave a comment and review on new ideas and guests you want me to bring on for future episodes. Plus, why don't you head over to YouTube and see extra takes while you get to know our guests even better. And make sure to come back for our next episode where we dive even deeper into the people, the process, and the perspectives of both investors and founders. Until then, my friends, stay hungry, focus on your goals, and keep grinding towards your dream of making billions.